Today, I got to interview Scott Tolinski from Level Up Tutorials. Scott has its own website where he teaches web development, but he also has a huge YouTube channel and a podcast with Wes Bos. Wow, this guy is my idol. Like, he has all these amazing social media outlets. He's a content creator, he's a teacher. He does all these things and he does them super well. He's also been doing them for a long time. So in this video, he talks about what he had to learn to do a good job in this field, what it means to be a good teacher. But we also talk about how he deals with crazy comments and social media things, and even about how he was a breakdancer and a b-boy, and how that experience helped him in his life to become successful. So, without further ado, this is the interview with Scott Tolinski from Level Up Tutorials. Welcome, Scott. Welcome to the channel. It's so cool for you to be here. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to actually have a fellow YouTuber on here. I didn't even expect that. And then suddenly there's this guy with all these followers. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do the interview. I'm like, what? Really? I'm so happy with this. Thanks so much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I love doing stuff like this. Any chance I can get, so.
Yeah, I guess when you do stuff about the community, to me, that's like, it's so valuable to do stuff together, right? Even if you are in the same space. I really enjoy that. So totally. Let's talk about your name for a sec, because actually I do that every interview because I talk to people from all over the world and it sounds kind of European to me. So normally I ask people who are, like, say, from Ukraine or something to speak their name the way it's supposed to be said. I think yours is going to sound pretty American still, but would you mind, like, pronouncing it your way?
Sure. It's Scott Tolinski, and it's of Polish origins.
Okay. And have you ever been there, or did you grow up in the US, or?
Yeah, I grew up in Detroit area, Southeast Michigan, and my grandparents were from Southeast Michigan. They came to work in the automotive industry back in the 50s, and their parents both lived in Montreal. So they originally came from Poland to Montreal to Detroit. And so I have never been to Poland. I actually just went to Europe for the first time a couple of years ago. I went to Romania to speak at a conference. So I've been to, Japan a couple of times. I've been to Canada and, South America, but I've never been to Europe until very recently. So given the opportunity, I'll definitely go. But seeing as how I somewhat recently fractured my tailbone, flying for me is not a whole lot of fun right now, especially long flights.
I can imagine. That might be a nice bridge for a question I had a bit later, but I think you might have fractured your tailbone doing some dancing.
No, I fractured my tailbone doing something really mundane, which is hilarious. I was cleaning the bathroom and I bent down really quickly and I cranked it right on the spout. And I bent the spout off the wall. Wow. That's how hard I hit it. And then I went snowboarding a couple days later and I cranked it on a rail. And so I think just those two things combined. And then I flew to Iceland, and over the course of that flight, it was just like sealed the deal. I've been dealing with it ever since. It's been like 2.5 years of recovery. It's a rough injury, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and it's the mundane stuff to get you there, right? To fall in the bathtub, stuff like that.
My God. Yeah, it was no fun.
So when you were in Europe, did you notice like a lot of cultural difference?
It was definitely different. So I was in Iceland and then Romania, and Romania was pretty cool. I was in Cluj, and it was definitely a trip for me, especially because, like I said, I hadn't done a lot of traveling to Europe specifically, but I don't know, everything's just slightly different. It's just ever so slightly different.
Exactly. So let's jump a little bit here, because like I said just now, that you're actually doing a whole bunch of like tutorials, you have your own website with all that stuff, and you have a YouTube channel. So how did you get started with all that?
Yeah. So, okay. So we used to watch a lot of YouTube tutorials. I worked at an agency, like a 12-person agency. We did all sorts of some pretty decently big work, and my boss and I would watch a lot of YouTube tutorials over the time, and we'd just be like, "You could do that. this guy's making $1,000 a month or whatever. I could do that, make $1,000 a month, pay rent or
Nice.
something. And yeah, just like it was at a time when there wasn't a lot of coding channels, and we just sort of sat on the deal for a long time. Nobody did anything with it. We didn't really have the motivation. And then something you kind of hinted at a minute ago is that I do a lot of dancing. I've been a b-boy or break dancer for, oh gosh, like almost 17 years now, 16,
Wow.
17 years.
Cool.
For a very long time. And it was, I remember it very clearly. It was the day before Valentine's Day, and I slammed my head pretty hard on the ground, and I got a concussion. And while I was doing some maneuver upside down, spinning, and got a concussion, and it sidelined me from the gym. It sidelined me from even doing yoga. Like I couldn't do anything, let alone breaking. So that happened in February, right before Valentine's Day, because we had a photo shoot scheduled for my wife and I's engagement photos, and we had to cancel because half my face was black and blue,
Wow.
bruised. I like cranked it right here on the right about right here. So this whole side of my face was bruised. So she wasn't psyched about that because we had this whole like plan set up for February, and then we were like, oh, okay, well, I guess we gotta move it to the summer and change all of the aesthetic of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So either way, that happened in February, and then by March, I was just so bored that I decided to just say, hey, let's try this YouTube thing. We started it, and I just started cranking out videos. And the time that I would normally go to practice, like twice a week, for a couple hours, I just basically took that exact same time that I used to go practice and started recording videos in that same time slot. And it's like, well, no additional time added into my day, and just record topics of things that I was doing at work all day. Oh, here's this thing. Here's how to install Drupal. Here's how to, use SaaS, whatever. And wow, 2012. So all these years later, it's like it's still going. Really changed. Yeah.
Like you did like 3 videos in the last 2 weeks or something, I think.
I have recorded a lot more than 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this month is kind of rough for me because I'm doing 2 series. I'm doing one paid premium series. I do one like premium series that's like 20 some videos a month, every single month, almost like a magazine subscription on leveluptutorials.com, right? So I do one premium series that you have to pay to access. And then this month I was like, well, hey, that wasn't a big enough challenge. Let's do 2 for some reason, which is just a bad idea. So I'm doing like 40 videos this month. And I've probably recorded like 25 right now. So I'm on pretty good pace to actually hit it. And yeah, so it's been a trip. I mean, that's the one thing is that when you do like a couple thousand video tutorials on YouTube, you get a lot of reps in, and you get a lot of people telling you what you're doing wrong all the time, because YouTube's really good for that. So, hey, your font stinks. Your color scheme is too hard to read. Your whatever. So then I've like really perfected how I do all this stuff, and that's since led to just overall, I don't know, just the ease in my flow of working.
I really noticed this. It's like, I guess it's like repetition until you get there. Because I've watched like a couple of your videos, of course, because some of my friends said, hey, you have to check that out. And I did. And you do it with such ease. And you know what? I'm making YouTube videos myself now, but I've never done it. I've always been on stage playing music, speaking in front of people, in front of like CTOs for work. But this, wow. Like I think I've done like 25 takes for an intro. Easy.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing is I've gotten really good at not having to do those takes, and I don't write a script, and I don't like my preparation is the code that I wrote ahead of time. Like I write the code, I have it up on the monitor. I know the code that I'm writing. So then I have this screen that's like, here's what I'm going to be teaching you. Here's where I'm going to get to. And I could just go through it and talk and code and whatever, because I know the material. I don't have to prepare. I don't practice other than writing the code. And I don't write a script. So if I goof up, like what I do is like I flub a word, I stop, I take a second, I just retake it, and that makes editing really easy because you always know the second take.
You know where the gap is, basically.
Yeah, and I almost edit pretty visually. So like if I look at my like after I get done recording, I look at the timeline and I just see the gaps, and I just immediately put a cut at all of the gaps. And then when I go through and look, when I hit those cuts, I adjust it. and it breezes through it. So I do all the editing right now myself, and it is I got it down to a science. I'll tell you that.
Wow. Okay, so I certainly do not have that. So I'm going to be checking out your videos. So given that you do it this way, what do you think makes a good teacher? Because you know what? I think you're clearly successful. You have a bunch of subscribers. A lot of people watch your videos. So what do you think makes you a good teacher in this case?
I think understanding the pain points that people are going to hit is the biggest thing. Like when I teach something, it's typically something that I've learned somewhat recently. And not to say that like I don't know the content, because I research pretty heavy, but if I'm building an app, what I do is I go in fairly blind. Like I like to not read the docs the whole time and just try things and then hit issues, right? Hit pain points. And that like leads me to like understand the kind of things that people are just going to try or just do, and identify what those like pain points are. So for me, I think what makes a good teacher is being able to understand the mindset of somebody who like just flat out doesn't understand the concept. And we get that a lot. I mean, some teachers, they just know, they know the in-depth and the technical things way too much to the point that they're spouting off jargon like everybody understands it. And that's like such a huge thing, is like people don't get what things are. And, I think I understand that because I don't know, programming and development, it's not that it didn't come easy to me. I'm definitely more of like a visual developer, like CSS, that's my jam, right? And so when I was first learning JavaScript, it took me a long time and it was hard. It was hard to learn any of the frameworks. And now I feel really proficient in all of it, and I feel very comfortable with it. But I think I still hold on to like understanding what exactly new people will have trouble with.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good trait to have, because I've been quite advanced for such a long time now on like pretty high level with big clients that I actually kind of assume that people understand things. So if you, for example, look at the videos on my channel, they are pretty high level already, but it's just the stuff that bugs me during the day, let's say, that I talk about. But it doesn't mean that that actually means I'm a good teacher, because I might not actually know what people struggle with. Because I'm kind of assuming if someone is in my team, that's the level of everybody. That's obviously not true, right?
Totally. And when I first started starting these videos, we was pretty new. I mean, I got my first agency job in 2011, and I started the tutorials in 2012. So I was pretty green when we first started. And I think the one thing I understood the most from starting in that position was that there's a huge gap, or a huge like missing space in tutorial content for people who just like they're really new to everything. They're new to everything. And because of that, like less people will get value out of it if it's too high level, and if it's a little bit lower level, a little bit more I don't know, very explicit. Like I remember like a specific one of the tutorials I had done in a Meteor tutorial back in the day. I had explained something, and just explaining even like what the code was in JavaScript language. I remember I said like, all right, now keep in mind that this is just a function accepting an object. This is like nothing more than a function accepting an object. And people were like, oh, I can't believe I thought it was something special. It's not anything special. It's just a function. Like, well, I don't know why I thought it was something special, but like sometimes people, like when they're learning something new, they have a hard time contextualizing everything. It's like, no, this is just JavaScript. And if you learn it as just JavaScript and not, all right, Meteor's way of doing thing or React's way of doing thing, then you understand it a little bit better. I always talk about like .map in React. Like people left a comment on my video. It's like, why does React have this weird .map keyword instead of like a for each loop? Well, okay. Well, if you understand why a map is appropriate and where a map comes from, just JavaScript and what it's actually doing, then the whole thing makes more sense, and you understand it better, and you have better control over your code. So.
Yeah, this is what I like kind of about React. It really keeps the data very neat, and you know where everything's going.
Yeah, and you get better at JavaScript while writing it, which is such a huge, like, since starting React in 2015 or whatever, I've just gotten so much better at JavaScript because of it.
Well, it forces you to certain structures that are really code-like. This is what I also sometimes don't like about it, but that's a whole different video.
Yeah. I know. I've started writing a lot of Svelte code, and now that I'm like in that I've done all that React stuff, it's like, oh, it's actually really nice to have all these like template helpers and these
Exactly. I was
easy
almost
things
going to
in
say, like
Magento.
React versus Vue versus Svelte, for example. The other
Hmm.
two are much more template driven, and React is much more data focused. But that's like a very long discussion that we don't have to
Yes.
do now. But imagine, like, the content you make now, right? Could you transfer that, the stuff you do now, to, let's say, a company where I work, which is a global tech company that has like some sort of academy kind of thing? Do you think
Hmm.
that translates for like consultants wanting to learn something, or is it really far away?
I think so. I mean, my content is all largely just focused on like, so if I'm going to teach you React, I'm going to teach you real world stuff, like the stuff that you're actually going to use, and I'm going to teach you the basics. But I'm going to teach you the basics while we're doing something real world. Like I'm doing a Sapper Svelte course right now, and we're just building a blog with Markdown from scratch. It's like, all right, I'm going to teach you all of the concepts within this, but the end result is going to be an actual blog application that you can use with transitions and animations so that you can take that and say, adapt it to just about anything you want to do. I used to work for Ford, and it was on this like prototyping team at Ford where we were coming up with all these experimental interfaces. And I feel like I understand that sort of corporate world where they have very real demands, and a lot of my understanding about what people need to do in their day-to-day job comes from years and years of working at corporations and agencies overall. Because I didn't start to do this full time until somewhat recently. So
Ah, so you've kept working at agencies or tech places
for
while doing this.
yep.
Ah,
Yeah.
cool.
Maybe until
Yeah.
like 2017, I think. Maybe even later than that. I worked at a startup out here too after I moved out to Denver. So I lived and worked in Southeast Michigan for a long time. And I worked at a 12-person agency. I worked at a 24-person agency. And then I worked at like a 3,000-person agency. And so like I got like, and I worked at a startup. I feel like I've gotten such a wide range of experience in my dev career that like, the stuff I'm teaching largely is built around the things that I've learned in those experiences.
Oh, yeah. I think that's super important because, for example, I work a lot with Vue.js, and now there's this new version coming out that looks a bit more React-ish. It's more composable and stuff. And everybody's like, yeah, you need to go and do that. And then I'm like, yeah, but I have a team with 4 guys in India, 4 in Ukraine, a couple in New York, a couple in Paris. They all have different approaches, and I just need like a shallow learning curve because otherwise my project will just not succeed. So I kind of choose the one that is longest, most stable, easiest to learn, and then later on we add complexity. And generally, when you look at some tutorials, I think yours are really clear, but a lot of other people just dive in deep and start with map functions and all those other things that these guys might have no idea. Like, what is a unit test? Why do I need to write it? Like, there's so much discrepancy there. But it's nice to see that yours are actually it's like proper beginner, but it helped me also, even though I'm not. So
Yeah,
props for you.
yeah, and
That's nice.
that's really the goal, you know. And I understand that like uh, how teams are always specifically like in all these big environments, no matter what it is, a team of developers is always going to move slower than like an individual who's just picking up and using the latest and greatest. Because I can pick up and use the latest and greatest, but like if I was managing a team of 20 people, I wouldn't expect everybody to be on the same page there. And that's such a huge thing that I think a lot of people who are learning or teaching just like don't get that it's a different world.
Exactly. So something else. When you look at like your social media and your profiles and everything, it all looks so amazing. But the way to get there is not always the easiest I can imagine. There must have been some sort of challenges or things. And like what I know for myself is that failures really help me. Like it can be any sort of thing. Like and then because of that, I get better at something. Do you
Mhm.
have something similar? Do you have like challenges that you had to overcome, and now you're like really high up and you're happy with what you're doing?
I've had just a tremendous amount of failures and challenges. I mean, even specifically to go back to like other things, like non-coding related stuff. So when I first started dancing, and dancing competitively, we used to go to these competitions. They're called battles. We used to go to these battles, and when I first started, this guy who was like pretty high up in the scene in Chicago was like, "Listen, you're not going to win anything for like 5 years. So don't like just go and try to win, but don't be like hard on yourself when you're not winning. Just learn from it. And sure enough, he was right. We won our first. We had entered probably like 50 battles before we ever won one. And a battle is like largely like a tournament structure where there's like 40 teams that enter and like a team of 4 people. And then they pick the 16 best teams, and then those guys go off in a bracket style, and you get to the end where you're in the finals or whatever, and you win a big old check or whatever. So I have like a giant check that I won for my first battle. It's like sitting in my
That's
house.
awesome to keep, right? So
yeah.
to give a bit of context, because I know what b-boys do, but I don't know how the battles work. Like you do like a dance off and somebody judges. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So there typically will be like let's say like a 4-on-4 competition, right? Because they can range anywhere from 1-on-1 to 10-on-10, whatever.
Yeah.
So in a 4-on-4 competition, you pick your four guys on your team, your not necessarily guys, 4 team members, right? And so you have your 4 team members, and they have their 4 team members. There's a DJ and some odd amount of judges. The judges just pick who wins based on who's overall the best. So the DJ puts on music that you've never heard before. And maybe it's a song that maybe it's a song that this is the first time you're hearing it. Some DJs like to even like really make this stuff up almost on the spot using loops and whatever. And so you don't know the music, so it's not choreographed. You can't plan for it. And you just go one person at a time, then the next team, then the next team, then the next team. You just sort of go back and forth until either a set limit or a time limit. And at the end of it, the winner is usually pretty clear. Sometimes it's not. And there's all sorts of competing judging formats right now. In fact, it's going to be in the Olympics. So because of that, it's like they've been really solidifying everything. Yeah, Paris 2024 or 2024.
It kind of looks like an artistic. It's like an art form, right? So how can you judge? Because to me, it's all good. Or is there also certain technique that you can score on?
So there's like almost like a bunch of different categories. So like the basics of it is really that there's the athletic side of things where you're doing the spins and flips and whatever. And then there's the whole artistic musical side of things, because here's a song you've never heard. You have to be able to be on beat, not necessarily just like dancing on beat, but on beat with everything you do. Like if someone comes out and does a spin trick or whatever, and then somebody else does a spin trick or whatever, and they're on every single beat, the guy who's on every beat is going to win. So the music is first and foremost the most important thing. And so like somebody can win a competition doing only actual stand-up dancing, footwork dancing, whatever. Somebody can win that competition just doing that stuff over somebody who did something really amazing as like a trick. Because the tricks are valued, but they're valued at like the same degree that somebody who's a really good dancer is valued. So
it's also entertainment value, I guess. And there's like confidence and all these extra things.
There's so many like intricacies in it, because when people first start watching it, they see the crazy stuff and they say, all right, this person won because they did the craziest stuff. But that's once you've seen the crazy stuff 100 times, it's not as exciting. Like I get really excited when I see somebody doing something I've never seen, or something interesting, or something crazy artistic, or whatever. So once you start to get into the intricacies of it, there's a very high level of depth, artistic depth within everything beyond the shareable image of somebody doing some insane head spin or something.
So did training for all this stuff set you up for life? Like, because you're quite successful now at work and all that creativity, and like, does that like work together?
Yeah. And like I said, we entered like 50 battles and we lost all of them. I mean, that's hundreds of rounds where I've gone out and just completely lost. And then just got used to losing and learning from it. Lose. And then we won one. And it's like, once you win one, you finally get it. And after that, we won a whole ton. Like we were able to like show up to things just knowing we had the whole tournament in the bag. It's like, okay,
nice.
we just got it.
That
and like sometimes
is cool.
Yeah,
right?
It was cool to be able to show up with like two guys and just like know, all right, no matter who we face, it's not going to be that tough. Unfortunately, we never got to that level outside of the Midwest. We entered a lot of stuff in LA or New York or wherever, and just could get demolished by those scenes are so much stronger.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
But that set me up for for like being able to deal with failure. And just like that, like YouTube videos, I probably produced like 200 videos before a lot of them really got any traction. And,
Oh,
and that was
wow.
like really just, I wasn't doing it with the expectation that it was going to be easy, that I was going to do one, and all of a sudden I was going to be, making money on YouTube, which is tough to do anyways. But like, I didn't have that expectation. And I think having the ability to say like, all right, you can beat your head against this thing, and if you give up, then it's never gonna happen, right? So like being able to learn lessons from those failures was just such a important aspect of that training. And again, even starting a business. So like I work full time on Level Up Tutorials. My income is entirely generated through our subscription model on our website with this premium content. And this was not my first time coming up with a subscription model. And it was not my first time trying to make this business work. In fact, I like failed several times at different business models. I tried to do like a $8 a month, but like you didn't get a whole lot of value out of it. It's like, oh, you don't get ads on the site. Okay, well, nobody wanted that. Then nobody cared. And then it was like, okay, well, I'll do the Wes Bos model where here's one course, it's $180. It's a big old course with a lot of information. Nobody wanted it. And it wasn't until like I really refined that through all the lessons that I learned in terms of like, all right, what is actual value? What are people willing to pay for? What are people not willing to pay for? Like, how do I provide the most amount of value in a way that like it makes the product actually valuable? So that was like so many learning lessons where I've just learned to learn from my failures in that sort of way and examine why things aren't working instead of just trying the thing that isn't working over and over again.
Yeah. And so if someone wanted to start now doing this, what would be your advice to them?
If they wanted to start a business or a YouTube channel, because I think those are very different.
They're pretty different, right? Let's start with YouTube.
So for YouTube, I think the key that people miss is just value gets shared, right? Value gets passed along. If you're providing good quality content that provides value, it's going to naturally get people's attention. People are going to want to share it. They're going to want to pass it along, especially if it helps them. But also like helping, you shouldn't necessarily try to help 1 million people. Maybe help, 1,000 people. And that's like pretty good too,
Yeah,
So
true.
a lot of these like meteor videos I'm doing now, I'm not expecting them to get more than, 1,000 views, maybe. Like, I don't care if they do or don't, because for me, it's more about the value that I'm providing to the people who want to see this stuff.
You just put that thing on the map for me again, so I'm gonna re-look into that now. So I might not use it, but it's pretty interesting, right? So that actually worked.
Super interesting, and it's all that's what it's all about. Is just providing that value and understanding like what that platform is like. Like YouTube specifically is a platform where people like free things, right? So like I've like really sort of separated like what makes a good YouTube video from what makes a good tutorial product. Like they're very different for me. Another thing that people tend to ignore, especially when they're first starting out, is the power of like high quality production. And I don't mean like a lot of equipment, high quality production. I mean, you have a good looking camera, you have good audio. It doesn't need to be the craziest audio. Like I have a fancy audio setup. It doesn't need to be as fancy as mine. It can be like a Bluebird or whatever. Anything that's better than a webcam mic, right? So having a decent mic, decent audio, and then understanding the presentation of it all, where you have your code on the screen. Is that code readable? Can users really understand what you're doing? Sometimes there's like little things. I remember I watched some video tutorials when I was first starting, and I was so frustrated because the person would type, and then Command W away, or Command Tab away from it really quickly. So it's like you had to like get that frame down to the second to pause the video to see what their code is.
Oh, wow,
and just
yeah,
that little
that's
act of
no
being
fun.
like, let me linger on this code for a second. That way, if you want to look at it, you can pause the video. Like those little things that you just learn and pick up from watching a lot of bad content that people just don't seem to inherently understand. And maybe that's why my content got good in the first place, is because I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials over my career, and I feel like I know what makes a good one and what makes a bad one just by what I've experienced and how annoying some things can be.
Yeah, I can really imagine people putting their internal processes onto the viewer by always alt tabbing all the time. Maybe some people just do that. Or like I know for myself, my brain works quite fast. Doesn't mean it's good, but it's fast. It iterates a lot. But if I put that on other people that are not like that, that tutorial would be quite bad, probably.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, and it's all practiced. It's one of those things that's like you don't even realize you're doing it because you've been programming this way for so long, or this is just how you work. And it took, some of it was things that I've noticed, and some of it was just people skewering me in YouTube comments. I remember like getting absolutely worked in a WordPress video for people because I spent like 2 minutes like talking about WordPress before I like went into it. And I like learned, all right, if the title is how to install WordPress, I better be installing WordPress within, 12 seconds of that video starting.
Sure.
Otherwise, people who went to go see that are going to be really annoyed. So that's like a lot of little things that you pick up, I guess.
And have you ever had like those super negative comments that YouTube is known for?
Yes. Just
Oh
an
boy.
endless,
I haven't had
endless
them
amount.
yet, by the way.
So you will, and I've had so
Sure.
many that it's like outrageous. I had actually somebody sending me like for some reason they were sending me like a homophobic slur every day to my inbox,
What?
my email. I don't know why. I would just get one from an unnamed email, just like one line, and just like, well, okay, thank you, because apparently I blocked them on YouTube comments or something. But yeah, people are rough, man. I get so many of them. And it's funny, like I could probably like open it up and find any on a given day. Just like, this video is totally worthless. Just like, oh, thank you for constructive feedback. So
Yeah.
I always just delete and block those people because, like, one, the comments are not there. The comments on my videos, this is their educational videos. The comments are there to help other people along, right? The comments, the reason why they're there is if the framework's changed over time and somebody has an update. Okay, now you have to do this instead of this because the version changed, like the versions do. Like, that's why the comments are there. The comments aren't there for you to be like, what's this guy doing? He looks like a loser or something. So like, I've gotten so many comments, negative comments over my day. I just breeze them off and just delete and whatever.
Yeah, it must be rough. So with all that knowledge and all that experience now, so imagine you had like a big billboard and you can put it on the highway, and then every day like hundreds of thousands of people would see it. What would you write on that for people to read?
I thought about this because I was thinking like, all right, I think people need to be like just cooler to each other overall, like be cool. But I don't know. I have this tattoo here, and it means a lot to me. It's we got it on the day my son was born. My dad and I both got the same one, and it's an adapted Bruce Lee quote, which is he says, be water, my friends. And he's talking about the strength of water. My tattoo just says, be like water. So maybe that's what I would have it say, because that whole interview with Bruce Lee right there is like pretty profound. I'm a big Kung Fu fan, and granted, the Bruce Lee films aren't necessarily my favorite films, but like, he as an individual is extremely inspiring to me. And I'm a huge fan of him as a person through his philosophy stuff. So in general, just the lessons that can teach you about how to adapt to your surroundings, but also how to shape your surroundings while adapting to them, and how to be flexible in those sort of ways.
So
It's
be
just
like
profound
water
for me.
is it's like about being agile about stuff, I can imagine, and not letting it bother you as much.
Yeah, you're so like, I mean, if you think about it, it's like a river. It both conforms to its surroundings, but it also shapes the surroundings themselves. It's carving away via erosion, but it's also fluid. It adapts. It's just flexible.
I think that's really a great one. And actually, I have a little story about something similar, because I used to work with people in India a lot. And I always had my colleagues kind of hate on them a little bit as developers. And this is just the thing we do in the West, but that's because we didn't really get their culture. Because someone from India who worked with Western people a long time, he told me, like, we are more like water. We are like super agile, and we just do whatever it needs to get through the day to be successful, and then move on. And if the next day it's a bit different, we'll do that. So don't give us tasks that require long planning and deep thinking. Give us different tasks to be super agile and super successful in the short term. And once you start to get it, it's like, yeah, man, they're like the original agile kind of. And now that we know and we work with each other's strengths, like people in France, where I'm from, well, I'm not French, but I live here, they are deep thinkers, they are long planners. That's just the way they are. So if you combine those powers together, it's all, it starts to work. So I really like that thing about Be Like Water, man. Thanks for that.
Yeah. It's always shaped me, and it's funny because I was not planning on getting that tattooed on myself at that moment, and my dad was just like, my parents were in town for when my son was born, and because they live in Michigan, and he was like, hey, so if somebody was gonna get a tattoo, keep in mind he's 60 years old and he has never had a tattoo in his entire life. He was like, if somebody was gonna get a tattoo here, where would they go? I was like, are you saying you want a tattoo right now? He's like,
nice.
Yeah, do you want to go get a tattoo? I was like, okay, sure, whatever. Let's go do it, whatever. So it was a great thing, and I'm so glad I did it. So
yeah, and if it means a lot to you, a tattoo is worth a lot. Like it's like with my wife also, we were going through a bunch of stuff, and then every time something happens, she actually celebrates that or mourns it with a tattoo, and for her that means so much.
It's profound.
Yeah, exactly. So, man, thank you so much to take the time, because we're going quite far, and I think we can talk for hours like this, but then people won't watch it, right? So I don't like to cut this stuff because it's really pure and it's awesome. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Great, man. Thanks so much. See ya.
See ya.